Congratulations, Susan. I'd like to invite Tai Heng Cheng, a board member of the Frick Collection and the Foreign Policy Association, to present the FPA medal to Ian Wardropper. Tai?
Good evening. Let me start by offering my congratulations to the other honorees. Peter, you should know I went to watch El Nino last night. It was fabulous. Sir Clive, you might like to know that a director of HSBC Bank told me recently she goes to Carnegie Hall without fail every week. And for a busy corporate director, that's quite an achievement. So I thought you might like to know that. And Susan, I look forward to the ABT Gala next week. It should be fabulous. But I'm here today to talk about Ian Wardropper. Given my dual roles at the Frick and the Foreign Policy Association, I have the distinct honor and pleasure of presenting the Foreign Policy Association Medal to Ian Wardropper, the Frick's Anna Maria and Stephen Cullen Director. The Foreign Policy Association Medal is reserved for those rare, exceptional leaders who, in the judgment of the association, have made significant contributions to cultural diplomacy. Yet, there are some elder statesmen who rue lifetime achievement awards because they portend a departure from high office before the recipient is ready to ride off in glory. Like the wisest of leaders, however, Ian has already announced he will retire from the Frick in 2025 after 14 years of service. So high are Ian's achievements at the Frick that there are simply no peaks left to climb. We cannot, in good conscience, impose further on Ian's time and time with his wife Sarah any longer than we already have. During his tenure, Ian has managed to hold together in harmony at the Frick both radical transformation and unwavering fidelity to heritage and legacy. Ian's responsible for the first and only comprehensive restoration of the Frick Mansion in a century. This was an inherently contradictory task. It involved tearing down some walls and building some new ones, while preserving, at the very same time, the mansion mostly as it has remained for a century. Somehow, Ian pulled it off. Ian has overseen numerous well-reviewed physical exhibitions involving the Frick's core collection of old masters, while at the same time leading the way into the digital age. During the pandemic, the Frick launched its weekly online program, Cocktails with a Curator, which has been viewed 1.7 million times worldwide. At a time when all of humanity was isolated from each other, Ian and his team found a way to offer audiences globally a way to remain connected to art, culture, and each other. This program was the envy of an example for several other august museums. I know this because their board members told me. Ian's visionary leadership has also increased diversity at the Frick. I am living proof of that, while bolstering our cherished civility to each other. At the Frick's first Pride reception in 2022, Mr. Frick's granddaughter, Helen Clay Chase, her daughters and grandchildren attended alongside LGBT supporters of the Frick, both old and new. It is no mean feat to broaden the Frick's community while still retaining its sense of community. All of these achievements are on their face contributions to culture. But what of Ian's contribution to diplomacy, the other half of the criteria for this medal? Like the most influential and adroit diplomats, Ian has gently steered the Frick to achieve his vision without seeming to do much at all, and certainly without imposing on others more than they would want. However, while Ian prefers to shine a light on the Frick rather than himself, I can tell you that he has poured his soul into his work quietly and consistently over the years, without fuss or fanfare. One of the many puzzles of the restoration was the following challenge. How can a museum remain a museum without public access to its art? Ian's solution was the pinnacle of elegance and a case study in cultural diplomacy. If the public around the world could not come to the Frick to see its art, then the Frick would send its art to the public around the world. And so off our Vermeers went to the Netherlands, our Grecos to Spain, and even a Rembrandts to Poland. This in turn made space at the Frick Brauer, its temporary residence, to exhibit contemporary art in conversation with the Frick's old masters, both shedding new light on our collection and revealing insights about the world today. Let me end by putting into the public record a signal achievement of Ian's cultural diplomacy that would otherwise be consigned to his private collection of contributions to society, which he so discreetly keeps to himself. Earlier this year, the International Court of Justice held hearings on the situation in Gaza, receiving submissions from over 50 states, more than any other case in the court's history. There were protests outside the Peace Palace every day, and reporters seemingly at every turn. The importance to world order of the Gaza case and the other ongoing cases at The Hague cannot be overstated. During this most crucial time in global affairs, Ian arranged for Mauritshuis, the home of Bavaria's girl with the pearl earring, to remain open one evening for the judges to enjoy the museum's paintings and fellowship with each other. I saw, by the end of that evening, a pep in the step of several judges who just hours ago in court wore the weight of decision on their faces. But don't take my word for it. Rather, let me share with Ian and all of you a message sent to me today by Rosemary Barquette, judge of the Iran-US Claims Tribunal, former US judge for the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, and before that, chief judge of the Florida Supreme Court. She wrote today, "Congratulations on receiving the Foreign Policy Medal. I understand you played a key role in the opening up of Mauritshuis one evening recently for the judges of the various international courts of The Hague. I and other guests appreciated the special occasion and the opportunity to engage with one another in a beautiful context of the Mauritshuis art collection. Your accomplishment that evening so amply proves that art institutions and the cultural diplomacy they engage in can play an important role in international affairs. Ian, thank you for making the world better for all of us in your quiet way." No, I should have mentioned to you, one reason why I accepted this assignment is because I want to hang a ribbon on Ian's like a Medal of Freedom.
I thank Ty for his too generous remarks. He is an exemplary trustee, and I don't know how he manages it because he's constantly traveling internationally. I sometimes think that he is the Frick's foreign policy. I'm grateful to the Foreign Policy Association for this award, which really goes to the institution I represent. Ty's spoken quite a lot about the Frick, so that frees me up to speak a little bit more about art and museums and cultural diplomacy. And as a historical institution, I'm going to begin with a little history. The visual arts have a long history of engagement with diplomacy. In the Renaissance, the Medici often gifted small bronzes by their favorite sculptor Giovanni da Bologna to rulers around Europe. His marble, Samson slaying the Philistine, was selected to curry favor with the Duke of Lerma, the powerful prime minister of Spain. The gift worked too well. Lerma liked it so much he requested a mate to it. John Bologna was unavailable, so Ferdinando de' Medici had to commission another sculptor, Cristoforo Stati, to carve a Samson and a lion in 1607 and ship the 1,000-pound marble to Spain. Lerma gave Samson and the Philistines to England's Charles, Prince of Wales, in 1623 when he was shopping for a wife. And later, when he became King Charles I, he gave it to the Duke of Buckingham. Um, Later, George III in 1763 bought it back and gave it to his favorite, Thomas Worsley, and eventually it ended up in the Victoria and Albert Museum. So if this sounds a little bit like the ugly tie or scarf that you get for a birthday that keeps being regifted, there is some truth to it, but it shows you the mileage that a cultural gift can have. I should also just point out that the subject, the triumph over a Philistine, is appropriate for cultural diplomacy in that it represents overcoming someone who is hostile or indifferent to culture. In the 18th century, porcelain became a desirable and, for shipping purposes, lighter diplomatic gift. For centuries, Europeans had tried to figure out how the Chinese made this brilliant ceramic, but it wasn't until 1708 near Dresden that the secret was discovered. The Elector of Saxony oversaw the Meissen manufactory tightly. Porcelain was so highly valued that the Elector, Augustus the Strong, gave a porcelain service to Charles III, when the King of Spain married his granddaughter. So many diplomatic gifts were made during this period that the Bard Graduate Center in New York mounted an exhibition called Fragile Diplomacy, based on these porcelain gifts. Augustus was so porcelain mad that he traded Frederick the Great of Prussia a regiment of 600 soldiers for 151 Chinese porcelains that he coveted. Called the Dragoon vases, they're still now in the Porzellansammlung in Dresden. Decorative arts continued to serve in promoting a regime. In 1917, Lenin gave his blessing that the undecorated plates in the Imperial Porcelain Factory in then Petrograd could be used to emblazon approved imagery and slogans like "Workers of the World Unite" on porcelain to be used in Soviet embassies around the world, demonstrating that culture still thrived in the new state. Of course, the reverse often happens, not giving but taking, pillaging works of art in war. Napoleon's generals heisted cartloads of art from Italy. When the tables were turned, the Vatican sent the famous sculptor Antonio Canova to negotiate the return of the Apollo Belvedere and other treasures to Rome. The historical examples I've cited are now all in museums, where they play quite a different role from the original intent. Art still functions directly at the state level, of course, but museums are now instrumental in cultural diplomacy. In 1982, I was involved with an exhibition called The Vatican Collections, the Papacy and Art, which included the Apollo Belvedere, which went to New York, Chicago, and San Francisco. For the Vatican, it was very much an effort to build relationships in the United States. At the same time, the event moved the Vatican to professionalize its museums to absorb more tourists, for better or worse, drawing an ever larger audience to see its collections and experience the underlying message of the church. A museum like the Frick Collection engages in cultural diplomacy in ways small and large. We are both a local museum serving the Upper East Side, but at the same time, we have an international reputation and send exhibitions, publications, and educational programs abroad. Our renovation and enhancement project, to be finished by the end of this year, will allow us to continue our mission. On a practical level, we are renewing our infrastructure, skylights, heating and air conditioning, electrical, IT, and security systems, so that we can preserve and protect our collections for the enjoyment of future generations. We are an art museum, first and foremost, which has more than doubled since in size of collection since we opened to the public in 1935. I mentioned Meissen earlier. We have been given one of the finest collections in the world, and we will have more room to display this German art form. I believe firmly that art, in addition to offering pleasure, provides insight into other cultures, which can lead to a better understanding between peoples. I began my previous job as chairman of European Sculpture and Decorative Arts at the Metropolitan Museum the week of September 11, 2001. I witnessed the solace art can provide in a time of crisis, but also the missed opportunity of the Met's Islamic galleries closed for renovation, not available to offer a window onto the Middle East at a critical time. The Frick will gain more space to support our exhibition programs. We organize first-rate shows, such as one on the Italian 18th century decorative master Luigi Valadier, which Apollo magazine called the best in the world for 2019. We will now have a much improved space dedicated to exhibitions, along with better conservation facilities to mount them. During our move to Frick Madison, our temporary home during construction, we were able to make exceptional loans to museums in Europe, as Ty mentioned, to the National Gallery in London, the Rijksmuseum, the Prado, the Musée d'Orsay, the Gulbenkian Museum in Lisbon, the Pollipezzoli in Milan, and others. In the future, we will be able to work with colleagues in those museums to mount reciprocal exhibitions in our new facilities in New York. Exchanges of art are an obvious way to foster cultural diplomacy. In the absence of these exchanges, the effects are telling. In 1988, I was a curator for a rare exhibition that traveled from the United States to Moscow. Still, for me, one of the most memorable exhibitions I've ever participated in. It's a great collection of medieval art from the Metropolitan Museum, sorry, Peter, and the Artists of Chicago. Absolutely fine, fragile material. We didn't trust our Russian colleagues to be able to build display cases to our specifications. So we built them all in New York, filled crates, moved them over to Moscow, to the Pushkin. Four of us, two curators, I was one, a conservator and a designer, put the entire exhibition together. Now, in New York, we would never be allowed to touch a screwdriver. They simply wouldn't trust us to be able to do something like that. But there in Russia, we were working like beavers. The Russians came down to look at us because they couldn't believe we were working so hard. And we had sent the plans of the exhibition months ahead. But the day before we were supposed to open, the redoubtable Madame Antonova, who ran that institution with an iron fist for decades, came down and said, no, this is wrong. We don't do this way in Russia. You have to change it completely. And we couldn't. It was some of the most delicate ivories and materials in the world. It simply wasn't possible. So we refused, worrying about international incident. She yelled at us for 20 minutes. They put up a sign in front of the Pushkin that said that this horrible exhibition is due entirely to the Americans. And of course, lines around the block. It was one of the most popular exhibitions ever in Moscow. This was at a time when, exhibitions from Europe or music or other things were rare. So it was enormously important to the public, and it was very moving for us to see that happen. When the Cold War ended, or seemed to, and international loans resumed for the first time in decades, Russian art, ideas, and personnel enriched exhibitions in the West. When loans of art ceased in 2012, I'm not sure how many people recognize this, I lost 10 critical loans from the Hermitage to an exhibition I organized on Bernini terracottas. The cessation of loans between Russia and the U.S. over the last 12 years has closed a door of cooperation and mutual assistance at a time when these are much needed. Museum educational programs, too, offer insights into other cultures, sometimes in surprising ways. Ty mentioned Cocktails with a Curator. Participants from around the world joined the chat programs around each of the 65 episodes. While we offer an extraordinary, intimate experience of art in a magnificent Gilded Age mansion in New York, through this it became clear to us that in a meaningful way, what we have can be shared digitally. Another example of the possibility of sharing art international by digital means is the photo archive in the Frick Art Research Library, one of the foremost art history libraries in the world. It is joined with 14 other photo archives around the world in a consortium called FAROS to make 25 million images of art and associated text available for free on the internet. And I should also mention that in 2013, the Foreign Policy Association hosted an event at the Frick Art Reference Library
celebrating the monuments men and women who helped recuperate art after World War II. During the war, it's one of the only times in our history that the library closed to make its resources available to create hundreds of maps to guide Allied bomber pilots to avoid cultural monuments in Europe. Thanks to opera, orchestral music, dance, and arts, the world is a richer and a smaller place. While we cannot take this for granted, these art forms have a history of promoting cultural diplomacy. Let's hope this may long continue. In the spirit of Cocktails with the Curator, I raise a virtual toast to that. Thank you.